from the western city of Lviv. We want to bring in Michael Bociurkiw. He's a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Eurasia Center, and he joins us now with the latest. Michael, it's so good to see you again. Really appreciate getting your insight on a number of things right now. We're going to start with, just a few days ago, President Zelensky said that he would be willing, in exchange for peace, he would be willing to declare neutrality, which means Ukraine would not pursue membership in NATO, and also promise to keep nuclear weapons out of Ukraine, which is something that they had already promised under the Budapest Memorandum, in exchange for peace. Does this sound like something that Russia would be interested in at this point?
Thanks for having me, and sorry for the background noise. I'm at the Ukrainian Media Center, where there's a lot of interest right now in these talks. And just prior to coming here, Anne-Marie, we had an air raid siren alarm, meaning that people rushed to their bomb shelters. This is happening as the talks in Istanbul are going on. And usually what that indicates is Ukrainian military has detected some kind of incoming fire. So what does that tell you? But in terms of what the Russians are promising, pledging, I don't know what words they're using anymore these days, is that, this idea of neutrality is very, very vague. And I don't think it's something that President Zelensky could easily sell to a nation on edge as Ukrainians are right now. Yes, there are reports that Ukraine will also pledge not to make nuclear weapons or host foreign military bases on its soil. But I think Ukrainians feel very much that it is a neutral nation. And I think also the Russians are promising in return to stop the denazification of Ukraine. That's another vague term. So all these vague terms up in the air. The expectations of some breakthrough in Istanbul, according to my sense and according to the people I just spoke to here, are very, very low.
And you point out in the midst of these sort of peace talks, there's a possibility that shelling continues, not too far from where you are. I want to talk about Russia's strategy. What we have been hearing lately is that there's a focus on eastern Ukraine, maybe even, south and east, cutting off Ukraine from the Black Sea, creating a land bridge. Do you think ultimately, seeing as Kyiv is not falling as easily as Vladimir Putin had expected, that ultimately the strategy may be to sort of cut off Ukraine, to carve out a piece of it and cut it in half?
Yeah, well, there are two things here that make the situation complicated. Number one is President Zelensky had said that he will go back to demanding pre-2014 territorial lines. That is, getting Crimea back and the Donbass. And now he's saying, I think he said it to Russian journalists the other day, that that's something that could be overlooked. In terms of the Russian strategy, their kind of dream since invading Donetsk and Luhansk in 2014 was to take over the entire Donbass. So right now they've only taken part of those two oblasts, but they want to take over the whole thing. The other thing they want, which they almost have, is that land corridor, that coveted land corridor linking the Russian mainland with Crimea. That's why Mariupol is so important to this whole strategy. And that's why you're seeing them bombing it mercilessly. They don't care if there are going to be any people left. Prior to the bombing, Anne-Marie, Mariupol had the same population as the city of Miami. And right now they're down to a little over 100,000. So that's going to be the Russian strategy. Keep on bombing and shelling populations into submission and then take over that land. It's a very sad, scary strategy to be pursuing.
Definitely. Listen, very quickly, I have to ask you about some of your most recent reporting. You recently wrote an article about, speaking of these negotiations, they've been on hold for a little bit. Part of that reason is because at least 3 members of the Russian side, the negotiators, it seems may have been poisoned. Can you give us more information on that? And I know it may be too early to tell, but who may be behind this?
Yeah, well, that was reporting by Bellingcat, the investigative journalism outlet. They're very, very trustworthy. And then the Wall Street Journal echoed it. It was actually 3 members of the Ukrainian delegation and Mr. Abramovich, who is unofficially representing the Russian side. They were reportedly all sick. And I think this was basically a signal to the Ukrainians to scare them, not to kill them. But it goes to show you the Russian strategy of inhumanity, of insincerity. So how can they be trusted in talks, no matter how high level they are? If I were President Zelensky, I would be afraid to go into talks with the Russians because they have poisoned a former Ukrainian president, President Yushchenko, in the past.
Thanks for that clarification. I think when I saw that Abramovich was one of the people who was targeted, I was a little bit confused. But thank you. I appreciate that clarification, Michael. It's always great talking to you. Stay safe.
Pleasure. Thank you.